What's up, all
You
night?
know, something else.
Yeah, autocorrect.
You can't
Autocorrect on my
test that
phone
on.
comes, Schumer comes up.
That's true. But right now, it's on display.
Which would be a bad
Right now. So seriously,
You liked it.
you should be proud of that.
You
You
like-
should be happy with yourself.
It's
You
amazing.
liked it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And my wife was like, what? But this is, I know exactly.
What time do you get here?
And no signage.
Yeah.
And no signage. Which is like, that car could go back and forth for years.
Yep.
It should have
I
done.
think I basically just have to do this.
I really did think I wasn't back in the wrong. He sent it back to her.
But yeah, I was in bad shape. I actually did
You'll see.
pick up. I like it.
And,
It would be better if I woke up
You
later.
know, I waited till my birthday for the last one.
You could go up there.
I didn't see
You're,
your
I think it's
You sent it to me on
Yeah. Right, I hope you appreciated that.
14 hours.
Yeah, timing was a little.
that's substantial.
It was an effort. Yeah, you need to appreciate the effort that people go through to entertain you.
Do I entertain you?
Absolutely.
Are you not
Are you
entertained?
not entertained?
Literally one day, a day. I'm not gonna lie.
You're fired.
You guys are polite.
What's that?
Aren't you guys are
Al, Frank,
I'm leaving in 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Well,
was that, or was that his replay?
Shut these two together.
that evergreen stuff. What else do you have to say? Sorry.
All right, what are you gonna do?
Yes,
Uber
yes,
it over
I do,
there? or
yes.
run?
No, he runs.
I mean, you're just gonna barely make it.
Great.
You the only one working today? I'll do it. But no, okay, don't start. I'm not worried about it. You're just a one-shot guy.
All right, so I'm on the pass. I'll call her.
It's spotless. It's just,
I'm finding the
Is that a problem for anybody, this light?
other than we can't see, no problem.
Okay, hey, you can take it any way you want, but I'm gonna turn this light on, okay? Then if it's a problem, I won't turn it on.
Just don't grab my shirt. It's a problem.
Is that a problem?
Yes,
Really?
you asked.
I feel like the way you're responding is making him want to turn the light on more.
How about now?
Making me uncomfortable.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Still?
yeah. Better or worse? Worse. Sticky. Come on.
Are you still getting a hit?
Yeah.
You have a better camera.
It's like a nuclear sunburst on his screen.
Jeez,
You notice there's only half the metal.
Yeah, it was a huff camera or something.
Really?
Why don't you go and take it on the podium? And see what it looks like.
Really?
I'll call you as soon as after I talk to you. Bye.
We're getting close.
Sounds like someone's about to commit some news.
Okay, that's better.
Is that okay?
Just right in my eyes, please.
Well, you know.
Sorry. Lob that right over the
Like you need your vision. How about now? Anybody? Don't look like that. It's not a good look. Okay? Your face is gonna freeze like that.
I was just gonna hurt and stand right there. Yeah. If you can spread out like a starfish.
Yes.
Because it's even, okay. Are you like that? You can't accept it.
I'll miss you guys. I'm not leaving yet, but I just.
I mean, I think it had to go, I think it.
This was screenshotted and blown up.
Put that out for
That
the
doesn't
tip.
sound right.
Very tough stuff for you.
You're right, that doesn't sound right.
Custom City? That was always what I heard. Oh, do I called it.
I know, well, you know, when you got that.
It's always,
Yeah, with the pie chart.
it's always like,
Yeah. I don't do the
Okay, well, Amir and like,
hey,
Not really.
you make a mental note of it.
A lot of it. Wait, did you see the kid go in?
No, I never saw him, period.
I don't think any snow.
I was on the bottom level, that was the wrong place to be.
That was yesterday. Normally that's the safe place.
Apparently the top level is the safest.
Yeah.
There are a couple of routes that you take from there to avoid, they come in, you know, the usual way. Plus,
Casa stayed over there late.
they stayed here late too.
So you.
You guys stayed like 1:30 or something?
Yeah.
Many enemies.
And they just did.
Put that out.
You can't get rid of it?
Cannot get rid of it. Once it's in the cloud.
Is it Gmail?
The Vermont beard, headhunter and
Alter ego.
Diesel Buzz.
He was
Jay-Z?
it's last every year.
Good. Yeah, you should.
It's also his
With a K?
first recording.
Still good?
Yeah.
Not as
Yeah,
good,
it's
but
not as good.
Oh yeah, you can't play that. You can't play it.
Yeah, crush those.
We can play like that.
Just ask it.
Yeah, yeah. And it was, you know, get these guys, they couldn't miss it.
It's like a lot of pressure.
So what I need.
Did you grow up in this?
Yeah. You like all that fun stuff.
40 years, 30, yeah, 30 years.
Okay.
Of course it is.
Yeah, right?
Kind of like Heineken, maybe Bob. Why? Too much like
Forever. Can't you see the look on it? Let him appear in court, see what he's got to say.
stick a line in there.
Just like every so often, you mean?
I haven't seen that in, this is the first time I've seen it this year. This year. And it's also popping up a lot. Lemonade change. Here's why we're there, so cool. Something else. I'm not sure.
Never ridden. I thought about never emailing him and going and I was like, that's too much. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I wanted to leave her.
Go back, we'll have to go back and read the story.
Apparently, we have a gallery set up down in these days. Like our Snapchat person, I don't know what they're doing. Taylor.
And when did they do that?
Didn't Vegas beat him? Vegas served 6 years.
Picked up on that?
And he served 6 years.
What are you doing for Christmas? The price hanging out? My favorite activity.
August 9th.
Plans.
2010. So he lost the election.
Oh, perform better when
Apparently it's not pie. I never talked there. I was like,
Just have it run on your
Yeah,
phone.
it was,
now I'm done, but like, I'd like to.
no, the State Department's a lot cooler than us. So,
But I was like, one day, know how to use it.
yeah, we're gonna get in a big fight with Scott, so. No, he's not. No, he's not. Cause like, that was the mom stuff. And they didn't wanna let us leave with our gear.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, just to leave all your gear, it's just sitting.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I was like, I didn't want to bother because it was like fine. I just took phone. Actually, took a picture on my phone of people like this in the hallway and everything around.
yeah.
This looks dangerous.
I talked to him this morning.
I saw you and I said,
Well, no, they were just not having it with their, you have to leave your gear. Oh, yeah. We won. So there was a bomb right as they were doing the net neutrality. And the cops were like, you have to leave. So we tried to leave with our cameras, they're like, you can leave all your stuff. And essentially the bomb too. I mean, all of us were like, no, not gonna leave my stuff here. And finally they just brought the dog in and swept us. And then let us leave our cameras. But their first response was to like be super angry.
I guess when they think of still film one of cameras.
I mean, we've gone through, you know, there's
I can't figure out what.
yeah, there's, I mean, it's also like,
Would you like going in?
Yeah.
Stuck out there.
it's like, this was also like, the only excitement I think that had ever gone down.
Probably the last excitement was the protest like 3 years ago on the same topic.
Right.
Went behind them. Yeah. That was,
And there was one protester.
that day. I mean, yeah, she had the sign.
She
But it was like,
but there was no real.
I didn't even bother going out because like facing the wrong way and
Yeah, it wasn't really a big.
where'd you live in Florida? Sounds like we're gonna go to
Waiting for a few more, but Schumer's here.
I just thought they came in.
You don't have to.
It's nice to relax.
We're ready. It was good.
Nope.
Just as long as I can see Nancy.
He wasn't invited.
Yeah, we've got a lot of reflection on, get rid of the glare.
Not completely. It's underneath the Bitcoin or whatever that is.
Oh, it's a Bitcoin.
no.
I have read most of the stack in here. This is the one about the people like, you know, mortgages?
No, these are the same ones.
Oh, I definitely didn't.
This was amazing that they
Then it
pop it
might-
up there.
I'll come over and say, hey, I need to get a picture.
Yeah.
The name. Call it Citibank. Oh, no.
I don't know how to get it back to normal. It took me 60 days to get it back.
It's definitely a point.
Change it. I'll probably have to go back again, because it just keeps popping up. But it's a good picture.
Hey, so what's the tentative plan for 3033?
Yeah.
Because we'll probably be getting stuff from the White House. We get it, you know. There's some stuff from Schumer and Pelosi here that I'll talk about.
And drop it.
Some stuff I sent. I'm keeping the government open what the plan is. I can address that. Have been asking me about that. A little, at least one question. And also, if he wants to, some idea about why the president did not sign the bill back. These pay-go provisions that I talked about. He wants to talk about the tax bill itself. That's kind of the story of the hour. That's really the wheelhouse. But I'm happy to deal with it. Well, he wants to talk about the government shutdown issue.
I wanted there
Kind
once.
of the lay of the land, what I reported here in the past couple hours. FISA bill with the inland spending bill, which would be a separate disaster funding entity.
About 5 of you guys.
Are they outside?
The Schumer and Pelosi are in the actual office, and all of our offices are outside. They close on Thursday.
No problem. Staff hall, that's what the location.
And all like the Christmas cookies and stuff out on the table. So.
Yes, that's actually all.
Across the hallway.
Okay, thank you.
I know. I'm gonna look.
They're talking.
So, wow.
So at some point you got smart, video, still,
Yeah.
you wiped out.
Nobody's gonna wise up. We're never gonna wise up.
It's through that class.
Yeah.
I just got a small Sony. Tiny. DSL. Yes. Yeah.
The pocket one or the one that everybody's been?
It's almost a pocket. I forgot the ID on it.
Not the A7.
It's not the A7. But it's almost a professional system. It's like, I think one step in it, $900, something like that. And, it takes a minute to grab it.
Let's see what our charts are. Oh, yes, come right here. Oh, look at that. 83. Got it. Very nice charts. I would like to compliment our staffs. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Now, we know they're popping champagne down Pennsylvania Avenue. There are only two places where America is popping champagne: the White House and the corporate boardrooms, including Trump Tower. Otherwise, Americans have a lot to regret. First, I want to respond to some comments that Senator McConnell made on the Senate floor this morning. His opening comments. First, he said, I brought them along because they are so good to use. This is McConnell's transcript. Now, here's what he said. First, he said, the Senate accomplished something really remarkable. He's right. To pass a bill of tax cuts and have it be so unpopular with the American people is an amazing achievement for the Republicans. It's never been done before. To have, for the first time, according to a Wall Street Journal poll, Americans prefer Democrats to Republicans on taxes. It's truly remarkable. Great accomplishment, Mitch. Great accomplishment, Republicans. Now, second, he said he championed the open process the tax bill went through. Sure, they went through an open process. Only if you define open by one party negotiating behind closed doors, having one markup with only one expert witness, while voting down every single amendment proposed by Democrats. If anyone believes that this was an open process, then I have a bridge back in my hometown to sell you. Then Senator McConnell told us this bill was passed to encourage job creation and put more money in the pockets of working men and women. Well, if you believe trickle-down economics, he's right. The trouble is no one in America, not the American public, not the economists, believe that trickle-down works. Corporations are flush with cash right now. The stock market's booming. Job creation isn't. Look at all the companies that have already said they're going to use their tax break for stock buybacks, for dividends that don't affect average Americans. And I love the example of AT&T. Over the last 10 years, AT&T has paid an average tax rate of 8% a year. They have 80,000 fewer employees today than they had then. Tax breaks don't lead to job creation. They lead to big CEO salaries and money for the very, very wealthy. And finally, Senator McConnell touted the repeal of the individual mandate. That's true. And now our Republican friends will own premium increases on millions of middle-class families. To many of them, the increase they're going to have to pay in health insurance far exceeds the amount of a tax break that they will get. And 13 million fewer Americans will have health insurance at all. So, as Republicans head to the White House for their backslapping and high fives to celebrate passage of a bill against the will of the American people, we have a simple message for our Republican friends. Republicans will rue the day they pass this bill, and you can bet Democrats will make sure of that. We are going to continue to hammer away at why this bill is so unpopular, at why what the Republican rhetoric and the reality is so far apart. Today's passage of the partisan tax bill officially cements the Republican Party as the party of the wealthy and the party of big corporations against the middle class and the working people of this country. Why? President Trump, his rich fans, cabinet members and donors, and the biggest corporations make out like bandits while the middle class gets crumbs and tax hikes. Corporations get permanent tax breaks. Individual tax breaks expire. By 2027, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, 83% of the middle class, almost 145 million American families, will either get a tax increase or see a tax change of less than $100. Meanwhile, according to the Tax Policy Center, the top 1% of earners reap 83% of the benefits. Let me say that again. Middle class, 83% get an increase of taxes or a decrease of less than $100. Top 1%, 83% of the benefits. So, it's no surprise when President Trump admitted this morning that the corporate rate was the biggest factor in their plan. Middle-class America's asking, they're scratching their heads. Why does the top get far more than I do? Why do I get a tax increase when so many of them get a huge decrease? This bill doesn't sit well with the American people right now, and it will not sit well with the American people next year. So when middle-class families see their taxes go up, they'll know Republicans are to blame. When middle-class families see their health premiums rise, they'll know Republicans are to blame. And when middle-class families see billions more in stock buybacks and dividends going to wealthy shareholders instead of increased wages or new jobs, they'll know Republicans are to blame. So, while Republicans will own every nook and cranny of this awful tax bill, Democrats are going to fight like hell to stop Speaker Ryan and the Freedom Caucus from ending Medicare and cutting Medicaid. Leader Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. I associate myself with the leader's remarks in the interest of time. When he talked about champagne bottles being opened in the executive suites and in the White House, I will add to that that Joe Sixpack is paying the price in a very severe way. Today, the House Republicans are cheering. They're toasting the fact that they raised taxes on 86 million American families, middle-class families. Remember these three numbers. 86 million middle-class families get a tax increase. 83% of the tax advantage goes to the top 1%. 13 million Americans may lose health insurance as their premiums go up under elimination of the individual mandate. This is what they are drinking toast to. Now the Republicans are taking their cool victory lap, toasting it with champagne, with their donors and the wealthiest. But they didn't do what they promised. Think of this. In the campaign, the president said that he would end carried interest loophole. Instead, maybe he didn't communicate this to the Republicans in Congress, or maybe they just used him as their front man, but they didn't do that. Instead, they did not end carried interest loophole. They protected and even added more loopholes for the richest. Secretary Mnuchin promised the GOP would not cut taxes for the rich. And then they handed the wealthiest 1%, 83% of the benefits in this tax proposal. The GOP said this bill was, the president promised the middle class would benefit when he was on the campaign trail. And, of course, it raises taxes again on 86 million middle-class American families. The GOP said it would pay for itself. It would pay for itself. Instead, it will explode the national debt. And on that score, when Speaker Ryan was asked this morning, while Mitch was in the wee small hours, or maybe this, he said, I don't know what he said, but it was this morning, either early or later this morning, when he was saying that the speaker was on the Today Show, and when they asked him if the tax bill would create enough growth to not add to the deficit, the speaker said, nobody knows the answer to that. Well, we know the answer to that. It will not. And don't take it just from us. We've always known, every credible analysis from every expert in or out of government, Republican and Democrat, say Republicans are exploding the debt with their giveaways to the wealthy. As Bruce Bartlett, who helped create the Republican tax trickle down with Jack Kemp, said, anyone who says this, it's not true, it's nonsense. Should I say what he said?
Yes.
It's BS. But he said the full thing. And the Republicans know it. Republicans only care about the deficit. You know, whatever happened, I say it over and over, the poor deficit hawk, it's become, if not an endangered species, extinct. Because the Republicans only seem to care about the deficit when it comes time to invest in people, not when it comes time to give giveaways to corporate America and to the wealthiest. That's okay. But the sad fact is, investing in people, the education of our children, nothing brings more to the Treasury than investing in early childhood, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning for our workers. Nothing brings more money to the Treasury, reduces the deficit, than investing in education. But that always has to be offset where permanent tax cuts for corporate America to the tune of over $1 trillion, which will add to more in terms of interest on the debt. That does not have to be offset or paid for. So again, if it's corporate America, you have a free ride. If it's investing in our children, you have to pay for it, and look at CHIP being one example of that. So as their tax scam explodes the deficit, the Republicans will tell seniors, oh, now Now we have this big deficit. We're going to have to say to disabled children, to working families, to our seniors, we can't afford Medicare and Medicaid. And in fact, they said this week we may have to raise the age to be eligible for Social Security. Now, Republicans are known, again, we have a better path. What we would hope to do as we go forward is to make the case to the American people that we should be working in a bipartisan way to create growth that generates good paying jobs that does reduce the deficit. That's the comparison between us. In fact, when Speaker Boehner was Speaker, and this all came up during the Bush years and the rest, and he wasn't Speaker then, but he referenced it as Speaker, where they said trickle-down economics is the policy that they were advocating, and if it create jobs, that would be good. But if it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. The free market. These guys have their hand in Uncle Sam's pocket every step of the way, but it's the free market when it comes to anything else. The American people saw right through this brazen con job Republicans tried to sell them. Even the simplicity of it, they were going to reduce the brackets. They did not. They were 7. They said it would be 4. It's 7. They said you could return your taxes on a postcard. Really? Maybe the size of this postcard, I don't know, but I don't know how you get that through the mail. American people saw that the Republican tax scam was not working for America's working families. The foundation has been laid on this message. The GOP tax scam is about bleeding the middle class dry to pad the pockets of corporate America and the wealthiest 1%. I'm pointing to the sign, Mr. Leader.
Because I am certainly not in that category.
The insulting crumbs they give working families are meager and temporary. The tax breaks for corporate America are vast and permanent. After all the president's promises, I'm just thinking, I think, did he get conned by the Republicans in Congress? Because they have not kept his promises
Willingly.
to the American
Willingly
people.
conned.
Willingly conned.
Yep.
He's responsible for his actions, no question. But they did not honor his promises to the American people. Well, maybe that was a con, who knows. After all the president's promises, after all Republicans brazenly transparent misrepresentations to the American people, the true face of what Republicans stand for has been revealed. Instead of focusing on the middle class, which contains millions of our veterans, on the forgotten Americans, Republicans have voted to install a permanent plutocracy in our country. That does violence to the vision of our founders, violence to the vision of what they sacrificed so much for. Thank you.
Questions first on this subject.
On the subject of promises, actually, one of the big Republican promises was that they were going to sweep corporate loopholes out of the tax code. How did they do on that front?
Every day we're finding more corporate loopholes that were put in this bill, and that will continue over the next month or two. When you do a bill in the dark, it gives a great opportunity for lobbyists to do their handiwork and give huge breaks to specific corporations and others. The corporate loopholes are worse than ever in this bill.
So they didn't simplify.
It's more complicated today than it was before they started. It's more regressive today than before they started. It's more unfair today than before when they started.
And by the way, these are tax expenditures. That is spending the taxpayers' money to give a corporate, and of course, they're not paid for.
One of the consequences of the bill is that they talked about having to waive the pay-go provisions. That's something that they want to do right away. I know on your side, I haven't spoken to you about it, but Mr. Hoyer said that they would provide those. Keep the government open if they put that in there. It seems like you guys.
Well, it's their responsibility. They haven't shown us any plan for how they're going to get it done. So let's wait till they come to us and tell us how they expect to get it done.
But would you be willing to eat that?
Let's wait till they come to us and see what their plan is for getting it done.
Do you think Leader McConnell misled Senator Collins in promising that they could pass the health stabilization bills in order to win her support?
Well, it's unclear what they said to one another, but it's clear one thing, that Leader McConnell and all the Republicans have made the healthcare system much worse. 13 million people not covered, premiums going up by 10%, and no one believes that the two bills that Senator Collins wants added to this, which now they've said they're delaying till January, but no one believes that those two bills would make up for the detritus, for the destruction that is caused by removing the mandate. And they're going to pay a price for that, big time. They talk about, you know, again, the increase in premiums for so many Americans will far outweigh any tax decrease they get.
And they will be, those increases are wholly owned by the Republican Party. When you take the individual mandate and reduce by 13 million people, perhaps that many, from the pool, you're increasing cost. The bigger the pool, the lower the price, the healthier the country.
One other thing, and Patty Murray has said this, Alexander Murray was not designed for a system where the mandate was removed. So it doesn't work anymore. So it's an empty promise, even whether it's in a bill or out of a bill. Yes.
They're talking about technical corrections bills on this, extenders, and you warned that there'll be loopholes near that for hemorrhaging revenue. How much and how did Democrats engage on subsequent tax bills in 2018?
Well, again, we think this bill is so bad that it's very hard to fix in small little tweaks. We'll see what they propose, but our view, we're going to hammer away at this. This is going to be an issue for us all year. This is not just forgotten. The fact they say, oh, once people learn of what this is in this bill, they'll all be for it. Well, the Koch brothers have already spent tens of millions of dollars trying to persuade people this is a good bill, and the majority of Americans, by most polls, think it's a bad bill. And the reason is very simple. The suspicions of the American people that the Republican Party is helping the wealthy and the powerful corporations and not the middle class has been confirmed in this bill.
And just to say, they did a massive bill that has trillions of dollars of impact on the economy without a single hearing, with only the person from the Joint Tax Committee responding to questions at the markup, with accepting no amendments. And now all of a sudden, they have this massive bill that they've done the speed of light in the dark of night. They think that we're going to, you know, that they're going to tweak this into something better. It's just, we have to go to comprehensive tax reform in a bipartisan way, create growth, generate good-paying jobs, reduce the deficit. If they don't have those goals, you wouldn't end up, if they had those goals, you wouldn't end up with this.
We had some bipartisan talks going in the Senate with Republicans and Democrats, and the Republican leadership pulled the Republicans out. We could have had a much better bill done in a bipartisan way that would have been permanent, would have done much more for the middle class, and done much more to reduce the deficit.
But that's not what they were about. They weren't about the middle class. In their DNA, the Republicans are about tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporate America. They're for trickle down. They're not for bubble up from the middle
Go ahead,
class.
Tom.
The Republicans repeatedly said, look, the proof will be in the paycheck. Next year, you're going to see, you know, more money that you can spend on your own. What can you point to as Democrats to say this tax plan isn't so good?
Well, first, a whole lot of people are going to get tax increases.
That's right.
And second, the average American says, even if I get a $100 tax decrease, why is a wealthy person getting a $50,000 tax decrease? The decrease should go to the middle class and people trying to get there, not to wealthy people, and that's why the bill is so unpopular. They know what this bill is all about. They know they're getting crumbs, if that, while the wealthy are getting big pieces of cake. And that's why it's so unpopular.
But I thought the tax policy center said 80% would see some kind of tax cut.
Well, the Tax Policy Center said some would get a tax cut, but it's small, it vanishes, and the wealthy get a much bigger break. That's what the American polling data, very interesting. The world has changed since the time even of George W. Bush's tax cuts. When people asked, if you get a small tax break and the wealthy get a big tax break, do you want it or not? Overwhelmingly, the people say no.
Senator, on a different topic.
No, well,
No,
okay.
so
Any
we're
more on
gonna
this
go
one, then we'll go to your topics.
Senator,
Yes, 1, 2.
just on the child tax credit, could you talk about the Democratic decision not to support the Rubio-Lee amendment? Was it a missed opportunity, and what's the path forward?
The Rubio-Lee amendment was hardly anything.
That's right.
It hardly, we had a much better proposal. They missed the opportunity by not supporting in our House the Brown-Bennett proposal, which would have really done something. You know, so many of our Republican colleagues knew this was a bad bill, so they tried to tweak it to make it a tiny little bit better. That's not going to solve the problem at all.
And in that regard, one of the champions of child tax credit in our House, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, who has devoted her life to addressing the needs of children in America, the child tax credit was something she eagerly awaited. It's important to note this. If you make $400,000 a year, you get a $4,000 child tax credit. Family of four, $400,000 a year. If you're a single mom with 2 children making $14,000 a year, how much do you think you get? $75. $75. It's a fraud.
The child tax credit that they did mirrors what they've done in the bill. The wealthier you are, the better you did.
Yeah. And not just by amount of money, by percentage.
On your, point that Democrats are going to keep hammering this going forward, and you alluded to this, that the president himself stands to do very well under this bill.
Yes.
Is that going to be a central part of Democrats' message?
The president does very well under this bill. Most of his cabinet does very well under this bill. Large percentage of his contributors do very well under this bill. Yes, the president is part of the top 1%, and the bill is aimed to help the top 1%. So the president's part and parcel to the problem.
But our focus in the campaign will also be on what this means to people in their individual lives. Financial insecurity, financial instability is a major concern, apprehension for the American people, and we have to show them there is a better way. We have a better deal, better jobs, better pay, better future, and that's part of the debate that we will have. So that, yes, they get all of that at the exploitation of the worker, and on top of it all, which is really kind of very sad, is they try to represent that it's about the middle class. Let me go back to Mnuchin. I just think his statement is just so Mnuchin. I mean, what are we talking about? Billionaires here.
He just seems to, Mnuchin seems to make it up as he goes along.
GOP won't cut taxes for the rich.
Yeah.
They handed the top wealthiest 1%, 83% of the benefits. So that's one part of it. But what does it mean to you in your life? You're going to lose some of your deductions, whether it's on your mortgage or state taxes. The SALT will hurt people enormously. What is and the services they receive from their state and local governments. It is also about they're going to lose access to quality, affordable health care as well. The list goes on and on. So it's really more about our constituents, yes, making the contrast, but focusing on what it means to them.
And one place we're really going to focus on is the suburbs. This is a horrible bill for so many suburban people.
And they know it.
And they know it. And the suburbs are now, well, I think, going to move much bluer because of this tax bill.
Senator, on year-end spending, will you allow Congress to adjourn or leave town without a chip deal?
Look, we're trying to get as good a deal as possible. We're not going to negotiate against ourselves right here. But the bottom line is we haven't even seen anything. They're so busy with the tax proposal that we haven't even seen a proposal. Leader Pelosi can talk about the House, but we haven't seen a thing from Senate Republicans yet. So we have to see what they propose. The bottom line is there are things they want, there are things we want. If they sit down and negotiate with us, which they haven't done yet, we could come to a good agreement. If they're just going to put in the things they want and not the things we want, it's going to lead to a real problem.
The Children's Health Insurance Program serves 9 million children in our country. Its authorization ended on September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. For 3 months, nearly, 2.5, how many months is that? We have had this vacuum where states are losing funds, are running out of funds to meet the needs. And what did the Republicans do? They had sent a bill to the floor called the Walden Bill. And how they pay, because you have to pay for children's health, you don't have to pay for corporate America, but you have to pay for children's health. How do they pay for it? What offsets do they use? Other children's health. In order to pay for the CHIP program, they'll take money out of the prevention fund, which is about inoculations for children. It's about addressing lead poisoning regard to children and other issues that relate to children's health. So they're saying to children, we'll pass children's health insurance program, but you're going to pay for it out of another a broader children's account. That's totally unacceptable. That's the bill they sent to the floor. That's the bill we voted against. That is the same bill that they say they're going to put in the CR.
And by the way, why did they wait so long? Children's Health has been in trouble since September. On issue after issue, they've been so busy giving tax breaks to the wealthy that they've neglected so many issues, including CHIP, including FISA, including issues very important to America. They're derelict in their duties, and now they're scrambling at the last minute. One more. Go ahead.
My questions are on defense anomalies. The House is considering taking up a bill that would boost some defense spending. I know you talked about a problem that does just boost defense not flying, but if it's less money.
No. If well, from what we've been told, at least the previous anomalies are ways just of getting around the defense cap, and we will not accept that one way or the other. They should. We have said all along there's got to be parity. Defense goes up, spending for average families goes up in terms of health care, in terms of education, in terms of infrastructure, veterans, opioids, pensions. We're sticking with that. We're not letting them try to get around this one way or the other. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.